To be awake is to be alive. I have never yet met a man who is quite awake. I ask for, not at one no government, but at once a better government. Let every man make known what kind of government would command his respect, and that will be one step toward obtaining it. Thoreau, a transcendentalist, urged the importance of the individual. He says that everyone must put their moral obligations before any law. He says that what is right is more important than what is legal, and he provides the way to stand up for what you believe in. It is a method called civil disobedience. This idea has taken root in America and all across the world. It has influenced the work of Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and many more. In Resistance, Thoreau says, "If it is of such a nature that it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say, break the law."
I feel that nonviolence, organized nonviolent resistance is the most powerful weapon that oppressed people can use in breaking loose from the bondage of oppression.
The president referred to the events in Selma as an American tragedy. And throughout the nation, even in Canada, there were marches through the streets of towns and cities.
Commenting on preparing for the Montgomery bus boycott, King states, "At this point I began to think about Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience. I remembered how, as a college student, I had been moved when I first read this work. I became convinced that what we were preparing to do in Montgomery was related to what Thoreau had expressed. We were simply saying to the white community, we can no longer lend our cooperation to an evil system."
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Thoreau's civil disobedience inspired Martin Luther King Jr. to start a movement that changed American history forever.
Now, the other method that one might use is that of resignation or acquiescence. But I think that is just as bad as violence, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good.
However, what Thoreau teaches us is that we don't necessarily have to be the next Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi. Thoreau criticizes society and all the people in it for not standing up for what they believe in. He says, "They hesitate and they regret, and sometimes they petition, but they do nothing in earnest and with effect. They will wait for others to remedy the evil." What we must all strive to be is an individual with opinions, an individual who will stand up for what they believe is right or wrong despite any consequences.
The city of Washington was built on a stagnant swamp some 200 years ago, and very little has changed. It stank then, and it stinks now. Only today it is the fetid stench of corruption that hangs in the air.
Ooh, ruckus.
And who did I see taking a bribe but the Honorable Bob Arnold? Don't worry, Congressman. I'm sure you can buy all the votes you need with your dirty money. And this will be one nation under the dollar with liberty and justice for none.
As Martin Luther King Jr. said, nonviolent civil disobedience is the primary and necessary means of effecting social and political change. So, is there anything you'd like to change? I know I want change in this school, and not the type of change that the new administration is bringing. I know some of you care, and some of you couldn't care less, but this is your school, and as long as you're here, I hope you want your voices to be heard. And not just heard as they promise they will be, theoretically, but actually taken into account. Considering that us students have been here way longer than the new administration. I mean, after all, it is our education. I know the administration has changed a lot over the years, but I have never been this mad at our school in the past 10 years that I've been here. And I tried going to talk to Miss Bryson. I tried to explain why I thought one of the teachers that are getting fired was a really good teacher, and she promised that our voices would be heard. But she didn't really mean it. They don't really care, and they're not going to listen to us. One student said he was appalled, And he gave the reason for firing the teachers is that they stood up for something they believe in, so they were fired. Obviously, this is what Thoreau told us to do. He said to stand up for yourself. And I was planning on creating a petition, but by Tuesday night there were already 3, created by other students who cared. And I ask you to take a moment to think about what you think is right. Is it right for the teachers to be fired, and for the students to be ill-informed, and for our voices not to be heard? Regardless of your answer, it is your duty to stand up for what you believe in. I ask you to take a stand.